I'm Lisa Poff, and thanks for coming to our second session. I hope that the rest of your compatriots show up soon. I want to do a couple quick reminders, and then I'll turn it over to Nancy to get us going for the day. We are being captioned, and I'm recording the session so that I can make it available on our YouTube channel for anyone who misses today. I'll send that link out just like the last time in a follow-up email. All the materials for today are in that Google Drive folder, and you should have a link for that and a link for the Padlet that we will be using today in your reminder email that you got yesterday. At the end, there'll be a session evaluation, and I put that link in the chat box. I will do it again later on just to remind you all. If you have any problems with your technology, you can get a hold of me either in the chat box or with my email or phone, and I am putting that in the chat box right now as well, so that if you have problems and you want to see if I can help you figure it out. And I think that is all of my reminders for the day. So Nancy, I'm going to let you get us going.
Okay, and I'm Nancy Steele. I'm an educational consultant and kind of riding herd over this Beyond the Matrix initiative that we're doing. And today, I just wanted to remind you, anybody who hasn't given us their shared drive link or whatever to do with their matrix in it, and your homework assignments from your likes and dislikes and the activity one thing. If you will make sure that we get that so that we can keep up with everybody and everything. I think I have like 7 or 8 of them right now. So I need just a few more. So if you haven't done that, please make sure that I'm in there, Lisa's in there, and also Jessica. So there's that. And also, I wanted to introduce you. I've asked a friend of mine and a great colleague, Holly Decker, to talk today. She is a little bit ahead of you guys on this, the matrix intervention modules. I started working with Holly a few years back around an individual. She's from Kentucky, so I'm going to let her tell you much more about everything. But I think Holly is going to guide us through today a little bit about their journey with this information. So with that, Holly, take it away, my friend.
Hey guys, I'm Holly. I am a speech pathologist by trade, and I am in Western Kentucky in the Ohio County school system. And I've got a little info on the Padlet too, but I think this is starting my 26th year. I've done about every setting as far as medical setting, outpatient. I've done the Kentucky First Steps program, with this the birth to 3 program. My favorite and passion are the moderate, severe, profound kiddos. So those are kind of why this has kind of fit a niche that I felt like had been absent in our practice and in the kids, and any practice you're in, and getting the kiddos to figure out what progression we can follow for communication. So Nancy has kind of asked me to do a case study kind of with you guys on a kiddo that we started on. She started with us on last year. She came to visit and at the high school. So I'm going to share my screen and talk to you guys a little bit about where, here we go, where we started and where we're going with this kiddo. Hold on here. Can everybody see that? All good? Okay, perfect, great. So I just kind of made a little PowerPoint to walk through some things with you and guide our discussion. Let me know if you have any questions or anything, and stop me, please. That's not a problem. So we started working with the little guy that you're fixing to learn a little bit about on this. That's been close to a year ago, I guess. And he is currently 17. Tell you a little bit about background history. He has autism. If we were going to classify him and, just mild, moderate, whatever, I would classify him as pretty severe. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. He has severe optic nerve hypoplasia or underdevelopment or absent optic nerve and nystagmus. He is legally blind. Sensory system dysfunctions are very severe. He has a lot of sensory seeking behaviors. We'll kind of go through a little bit of that with him. So Nancy came to us and we sat down with her. It was myself, his two teachers, the primary teacher in the high school that's in our moderate severe disabilities classroom, and the other teacher as well, and then occupational therapist, myself and Nancy kind of all sat down and kind of went through and brainstormed, and we completed this communication matrix on this child. We'll call him Hunter. And so we did his matrix and everything. And so I kind of took from what your homework was an activity 1 based on the kiddo that you have done the matrix on. I just kind of took those questions to kind of give you some background to kind of know what information you put in that activity 1. So we talked about vision. He is legally blind. He does see like large objects like furniture, and he can walk around furniture in the classroom, but we don't just rearrange his classroom. He does feel for things if he drops them. So like if he's eating something and something fell out of his hand, he'll feel around on the table or floor for what he's dropped. His hearing is fine. We don't have any concerns there. Gross motor is normal. So like fine motor skills, he feeds himself finger foods. No significant concerns with fine motor issues or anything. One of the things you're going to be talking a lot about, I don't think you've gotten there yet to talk about it, Nancy, am I right? The availability to learn component.
Correct.
Okay, so you guys will be talking about this and part of the modules and material and some of the essentials you'll be learning, and one of them was called an availability to learn. And this is an area for him. Some days he comes in alert and active, and other days he walks in, falls asleep, and sleeps all day. We just don't always know what he's going to walk in the door like. And sometimes he'll walk in and stay up for a couple hours, and the next day in the next half of the day, he'll sleep the rest of the day. It's very unpredictable, and we just one day to the next, it's really hard. So his availability to us to be engaged in communication and learning is limited, and it varies. When he is alert though, his communication, consists of like scripting a lot. We hear things we really don't need to hear that probably come from home. And he does script some songs every now and then, or it sounds like he's trying to sing some songs. He loves music. So those are some things that we feel like sometimes he tries, and every now and then you can get him. When he was younger, he used to be more echolalic, and we were trying to mold that into some communication. Now we don't get, and very rarely get, much echolalia, except for the delayed scripting that we get. But again, his availability is pretty unpredictable. The other part of the activity 1 talked about trusting relationships. He has created a really great relationship with his primary teacher. This teacher is a male, and he's about 6'2", thank goodness, and a bigger guy. This has been beneficial in this situation. And he's taken the time to try to understand the student's communication attempts and read his body language. And we'll talk a little bit about how important that is, because knowing the student at this level, which is the lower levels, and reading those subtle hints is going to be pretty critical. You guys know that, I'm sure. Conceptual skills, like what's his knowledge of just basic common objects. It's kind of limited, very basic. He actually uses a spoon, plastic spoon, but it's for self-stimming. He takes it and waves it in front of his eyes a lot. And it's also like a security blanket, if you will. Sometimes he just holds it. And that's a way that he feels kind of grounded, I guess. And then it's a sensory stimulating object as well. He sets and understands like the use of a chair. He does play with some sensory toys. He likes music. We'll talk about more about this, but he can hit a switch to activate music. We do have to, provide maybe some guidance because of the vision deficit and location and everything. He does not really seem to understand tactile symbol schedule that we have. We'll talk about some more in a minute. That's been kind of a challenge. That has also been tried with him in the years past. And then the availability to learn kind of thing, you never know. And we kind of put it off, and then we're bringing it back into it this past year or so. He does still wear a diaper or pull up. So using the bathroom as a concept we've kind of been working on. Receptively, his receptive language basic comprehension is fairly good, like time to sit down, time to eat breakfast, go to the table, telling him stop or no. He does demonstrate understanding of those things. All right, let's stand up. It's time to walk to the Miss Wattis's classroom, the other classroom, and things like that. He can do that. And it's just very simple, but he can do it. He has demonstrated great comprehension in that area. This is just a glimpse of his matrix when we finished, and we felt like he was at a level 3. And everybody has gotten to do this one time at least, right? Everybody has seen this and done this. Okay. So this is what his looks like a little bit. One thing I do want to point out, and I can show you how to get to this on your matrix. I can actually I've got it pulled up. At the very top, if you look where it says matrix ID and then administration date and then total score. I don't know if you guys found that on the actual computer. I'm assuming you guys did on the computer. Okay, great. The computer program. So he had a score of 25 points. Did you guys find that on yours, where to get the points? It took me a little while to find that, I'll be honest. And if you want, I'll show you, because why I say that is like, well, what's the relevance to if they have an orange box, which is a mastered skill, they get 2 points. There are 80 boxes. So if you get 2 points for a mastered skill, you get 1 point for an emerging yellow box, and that can give you points and give you a score, and it gives a percentage of mastery. 16% mastery is what you can see at the top of this one. Basically, what I liked about that when the matrix is you can see very small incremental changes as you do the matrix a second time or a third time. And parents kind of like those little things. You can say, oh, look, we're now up to 26 points, or now we're up to 20, even it's just 1 point. Hey, but that's making progress. And sometimes these kiddos that are these complex kiddos, it's really hard to see that progress. And just having a point or two here can make your day. It makes my day, I know, and it definitely is going to make a parent's day. These are not the easiest kids. I actually have his pulled up, and we can talk a little bit about that. Would anybody be interested wanting to see the actual? If you guys have all done it, I'm not going to worry about it, but I've got it pulled up. Do you know where to find the score? Okay, no, okay, let's just do that. It's just kind of nice because it took me a little while to find it. I've been playing with it for a little while. Okay, why? There it goes. I was like, why is my screen not? Okay, this one. Okay, let me hide it real quick. Okay, so if you're at your matrix website, can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you look at it, you've got all this information up here. And when you're viewing here, and when you go to see right here after the min data, it says view score. Okay, if you click on that, it's going to tell you, and it tells you right there a maximum possible 160 points, and that's where the 16% comes from. So for me, it took me a little, I was like, oh, that's great. I can show very small incremental progress to my families. So that was kind of nice. I also have his custom report pulled up. And I don't think you guys needed to do that, but you can create a custom report. So I'm going to show this to you a little bit about it because I think this is kind of neat. this just gives a summary of the matrix. We now kind of know what that is and his name and everything. But then it goes into what level he is at. And it talks about the unconventional pre-symbolic behaviors we're going to go into in just a little bit. And the intentionality of communication. At level 3 is when we see these kiddos go, oh, what I do makes a difference in what you do. And that's an intentional component to communication as they start realizing that. So this is where you're going to see that. But as you go, this is telling us behaviors used to communicate. Hunter, it's mostly body movements, facial expressions, some visual, simple gestures, and maybe some vocalizations. And then it's going to actually be able to expand to recommendations. So the general goal for this level is to increase the number of different places and contexts in which he uses those body movements, sounds, facial expressions, and gestures to communicate. So these are telling us, it gives us, oh, okay, let's try that. Now let's not just try it with the teacher. Let's not try it with the speech therapist. Let's try it with the OT, or let's try it with the assistant. So it kind of goes, oh, okay. Sometimes when we get these kiddos, if you're like me, I don't know, you may or may not be, but you're like, okay, I feel like I've got a mental block, you know, and sometimes we're so overwhelmed with everything we have on our plates. It's just like hard. This kind of guides us and goes and makes the light bulbs go off for me to go, oh yeah, that's what we can do. And let's do this too. And it just kind of starts the flow of thinking for me. This is talking about the function of communication where we're refusing or rejecting something, which is down those sections, the bottom of the matrix, those 4 areas, and the function, communicational functions. So that kind of gives you some information. Be sure to model and gesture what you want the child to do. And this is good, I have found, as an SLP for my severe profound teachers sometimes. I mean, they do it, they know it, but this also gives me support to say, hey, here we go, guys. This is a written kind of plan too. It kind of breaks it down a little bit. And I feel like they know these things too, but sometimes how we can break them down and present them, they're like, oh, okay. You know, I feel like we kind of have a natch some of us as therapists and specialty area individuals. So this kind of gives you so it goes through, where's this other one? Oh yeah, requesting a new action. So those are the questions. These are the things he is doing or almost doing, mastered or emerging, making choices. He's not quite there yet, but it's still a level 3 skill. So it's saying this might be a great way to start with a like and a dislike. We kind of know how that goes. But anyway, I thought that was a nice little way we could incorporate this information. Might be great for parents to see. But I just want to share that was something you can get off the website. And it also lets you click and talk about what their skills are when you want to generate that report. So again, at level 3, the unconventional communications, he's communicating, but he's not using any kind of distinctive, definite communicational device or gestures that are conventional. You know, he doesn't point, he doesn't nod yes or no, he doesn't sign yes or no. So those.
But Holly,
Yeah.
This is Nancy. Wouldn't
Yeah.
some of that have to do with his vision loss and not being able to see it?
Absolutely. So that, yeah. And I was going to tell you that mom, we found out, I don't know, sometime during the school year last year. And I mean, and this somehow not gotten communicated up the chains as he grew older. I don't know where it was lost. I had him as an elementary kid and didn't know he could do this either. And then I hadn't had him for years until, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. But mom just decided, oh, well, he answers yes, no questions for me. And we're like, he does? How? She got to tell us, she would put a fist out and a palm up or palm down. I can't remember. One hand was flat and one hand was fist. And we didn't know that at school. So this is a great example of why this communication matrix has to pull in the parents and the family, because we hadn't done the matrix on him when we found this out, I think. And we had done it with ourselves, but we were asking parents some questions and stuff and got that information later on. And we're like, oh, and it wasn't written in his IEP. And if it was, we overlooked it, and it wasn't really like a percentage or accuracy. But anyway, we hadn't had success with him doing that. But we're hoping to bring mom in and she can help us, show us how she does that with him. Maybe there's something specific wording she does, but using this communication matrix and the component of making sure parents are involved is going to be helpful. There's a prime example we learned. Another thing is, we had, just that you guys may have the same question, we had a big discussion when we were going through this. Okay, well, what if they function different at school than they function at home, or vice versa? Okay, what if we get a different level at school than mom tells us at home? And we all know that sometimes parents may read into things more, but that's okay. That's okay, because one component of the matrix is, the question is, to get a mastered skill, an orange box, they need to be able to complete that activity, task, express that communicative intent to more than one person. Okay, so don't forget that. Just because they do it with mom, or just they do it with the teacher, doesn't get them a mastered skill. You have to be able to do it across settings. Okay, so that's something that you can say, okay, great, now let's use what I do at school at home, or what you do at home at school. Okay, so that we can carry that over, and carryover is the hardest part for these kiddos. So let's use this as a tool to communicate with our families and open that door. I'm an advocate for getting our families in the schools. Thank goodness COVID's over, but sometimes I don't want some of them in here, and I know you're feeling the same way, but we have to create that openness so that we can kind of, both of us, advocate for each other too. Sometimes they can be beneficial. All right, I think that's all I wanted to kind of say about that. There, making choices, that C5, that's a hard one. I want to tell you, he doesn't do at all, as you see, it's white, because I feel like his visual component and visual impairment really is hard on that. And you know, we can give him choices, he can touch things, he can feel things, he has pretty good tactile integration, but still doesn't, I can feel something doesn't mean I know what the function is and purpose is and use of something is, you know, so it may take a lot of extra repetition to get there. So these are exactly what the orange.
Hey, Holly.
Yes.
Sorry, could you go back to that slide just for one second? Could you talk just a little bit about why y'all decided to stay on level 3, that you're not going further, that you're looking at that level only? Right.
Well, now I didn't say that. I didn't say that's what we were looking at level. We feel like that's where he's currently functioning at.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So level 3 is where we felt he is pretty consistently at. And as you know, not every box is yellow. And you notice he also has something in level 4 that he shows affection in level 4. So basically, you as a team kind of decide where your kid is functioning when you look at this. Okay. And this isn't something that's cut and dry. I'm not for sure much of anything in education is anymore, especially if we're with our kiddos that have more significant needs. My husband's a CPA and everything's black or red in his world. And I talk about, we got gray in education, and he just blows his mind. So I feel like this is a gray area, and we have to be able to understand that we're just going to come to agreement. This is where we're going, and we're going to look at this, and we're going to talk about some goal setting in a little bit too. But looking at this going, maybe could we get that yellow to an orange? Could we get that to a mastered skill? Would that work? What do we do to get there? Okay, so that's what the areas you can look at, and or you can look at the orange areas and how do you push them from a level 3 to a level 4? Okay. So that's kind of where we felt like he was functioning at. We felt like he was pretty consistent out of the 3. Yeah, we'd like to have them all in orange and mastered, but that's not probably going to happen depending on the kid's deficits. You can have a matrix that has a kiddo you think's at 6 or 7, but they still have white blocks in 3 and 4. That their deficits their vision, hearing, different things play components on different aspects of the matrix. So, and that's okay. That's not, you don't have to have orange in all boxes in all areas to say this is what level they're at. Does that kind of make sense? Nancy, does that kind of answer your question from?
Yes, and then
Okay.
sometimes you have to ask yourself as the team, like, are we, looking at, and I'm just making this up, Holly. I'm not saying that you all aren't doing this or anything, but in looking at making choices, you kind of have to ask yourself as a team, are we giving him those opportunities? Is that he's not doing it because he just doesn't do it? Or is it because we haven't exposed him to those things? So you're playing detective in multiple ways, not only about the person, the student, but also about what are we giving them? Or are we doing that? And how important is that at this time? So there are lots of different things that are in play here. Okay.
Yeah, and that's an example too. I'm not at the high school every day, all day. I'm at the elementary school. In my situation, my primary caseload is at the elementary school, and I'm at the high school about a half a day a week, but I'm always available by phone and email, which those teachers and I interact together a lot. But one thing I have to do, and I hate it, but I do play devil's advocate a little bit, because then I'm asking, in that situation, well, he can't do this, he can't do that. I'm like, okay, how many times have you tried? How many opportunities have you given him? How many times have you done this? And I'm not trying to, I'm playing devil's advocate. I need you to think about, was that enough opportunities for him to learn that skill or that task? How did you do it? Show me what you did. Because I have a different perspective. I'm coming from a different perspective than the teacher and the assistant. So then I might be able to offer, well, what if we did this? And what if we tried it 50 times before we say he can't do it? So I mean, I have to ask those questions to kind of get them to think outside the box for this kiddo specifically. But sometimes we have to do that. So I kind of broke down for you the strengths. And one thing I like also about this matrix is the orange, you can express to families, administration, whoever, the strengths of your child. Wow, he can do this and this and this and this, and he's almost got this mastered. And it kind of, you start there. Always start on those positives, of course, you guys know that. But on his level 1, that expresses his comfort, or the interest in people, those areas. And 2, protest, continues in action, obtains more of something and attracts attention. And 3, refuses or rejects and requests more. So to tell you a little bit about how he does these things is this guy, if, we always talk to him before we touch him and say, hey, Hunter, here we are. We're going to call him Hunter, for today. But so, hey, Hunter, here we are. We're here, He hears us. He has good hearing. He knows when people are coming or near him. And if he likes you, wants you near him, he'll pat your hand or grab your hand and hold your hand. So we know there's an interest in people, and he wants more, maybe you touching his leg, things like that. If he really, his teacher is so good about helping us in our OT. We worked together to work on creating some sensory integration things. He likes his teacher. He has this ginormous beanbag in his room. That's his. And he likes to lay on his back, and he likes his teacher to take his feet and lean into him, and they curl his knees up and give him all of that compression through his feet and his legs. And his teacher will model and prompt and verbally interact with him, pressure or push or more, and use some terminology. And when he's done, he communicates and protests, I'm finished, or refuses to have it again. Unfortunately, thank goodness his teacher's a big guy, by almost kicking his teacher away. But then we use, okay, I'm finished, all done, but he seeks so much sensory input. We have to provide that throughout the day. And his teacher's really good about keeping an eye on those kind of things. So That's an example of how he refuses and enjoys comfort and interest in people. He will protest, over the past couple of years since he's been to the high school, they've noticed, like he doesn't like cold food. He wants hot food. So Pop-Tart, nah, not going to eat it, but hot biscuit with sausage, he'll eat, kind of thing. So if it's something he doesn't want and he feels it in his hand, he knows he doesn't want it, guess where it goes? The floor. So, okay, we know you don't want that, bub. We got you, So we have tried to mold some of those communicative intents to be a little more appropriate, maybe just to push it across the table versus in the floor, things like that, to say, no, thank you, don't want that. If you want something to happen again, that level 2 and continues an action, like I said, he will hold your hand and he might pull you back to him where your hand was and want your hand on his leg again or knee. He likes that pressure. So he kind of grounds him, know where you are and where he is. I was trying to think of something else that I could give you a specific example for. Level 3 requests more action. So like when we're doing like sit down task, he's available to learn if that time's appropriate. He's available to learn. We're sitting down doing a task or something with his teacher. We kind of guide, and he gets choices sometimes, like between Century toys and something else or something, or maybe 2 Century toys, and he'll fill one of them and he'll want that. And then we'll set a timer or something. Okay, break, time for more work. And he may request that he wants that again by feeling around for it, because remember, he's blind, and know it. And we want, oh, do you want more? You want that again? You want you want more of that or whatever? And then we'll offer it. We've modeled it and we've done that communicative action that we want him to use. We'll talk a little bit about technology too with him in a minute, but that's just kind of where you can start to say, wow, look at all the good stuff. And look at where he's almost mastered, what areas he's almost orange. So I have the merging skills, he's at a level 3. That this also, if you break them down this way, it kind of goes, oh yeah, how can I get these to orange? And for me, it kind of like gives me a visual, kind of narrows down that big graphic as well. So requesting a new action, actually he's just in a new object. He just did this. We were so excited. He's just done this year. A couple of new things he's done that request some stuff from us. And his teacher called me the other day. He was so excited. But he, in the classroom, then they have a kitchen area. Over in the kitchen, I told you earlier, he holds a spoon, a plastic spoon, which, by the way, when he was little, Mom would let him come to school with a metal fork. And I was like, oh, can we change that out? So we had to work on that when he was little, getting that switched out to a more safer object. So it became a spoon. So now it's a plastic spoon versus a metal spoon, but there's pros and cons to both. So anyway, he didn't have it. I don't know if he did. I think he didn't come in that morning with it from home. And so when he got there, they didn't realize he didn't have it. He kept going to the cabinet area, and he would go get somebody. He would take them over there. That's another thing he's been doing, is taking you and lead you. And he did that last year, especially if he wanted to go home. He would lead you out the door, the classroom, to try to get out to where he knows his car drops him off and picks him up every day. But he kept going over there and going, and they finally realized that's the cabinet they have the plastic spoons in. And they were like, woo, yay, and so excited. Just, you have to celebrate those little things. But he was requesting a new object that was out of sight. He could, of course, he can't see very well, but he knew where it was and knew it was stored there. And he also knew the rule that you shouldn't get in the cabinets. So I thought that was also a good thing. So anyway, that was an excitement. And then he also took a staff member and led them to the bathroom, indicating he wanted to be changed a couple of weeks ago. We were pretty ecstatic about that too, because that's not happened. I don't know if it ever happened last year. Anyway, so that was a great positive, requesting something new to happen. So anyway, and he does show affection like that. Hugs. Sometimes, unfortunately, he may sneak up behind you if you're not watching and either give you a hug or something. And but he does like hugs on his terms when he wants them. If he doesn't want them and his sensory system is in a different state, he doesn't want them sometimes. But anyway, that's part of knowing your kiddos and paying attention to those very subtle cues of their nonverbal body language. Trying to check our time. All right, so those are some things that are still considered strength in my book. They're yellow, but then we can master that strength and make it orange and make that emerging skill into a mastered skill. And this kind of narrows down areas. This is like, okay, now where do we start? This is like, maybe right here. Maybe this is what we decide as a team to go, can we push these to orange? Can he do this? And remember, what is orange? It has to happen with more than one person. It needs to happen in more than one environment. So you've got to think about, he can do this, you know, here. How does he do it in other environments? Can we work with mom? Could he have something at home to where he takes mom's hand? Is he doing that? He may do that at home. We don't know for sure all the time about how that's working. But anyway, that kind of narrows that down for you. And also, I guess it's been a couple of weeks ago now, we have decided now that he's starting to show that, and we know we've talked about he'll activate a button to play music. So we've gotten some portable little buttons that will speak a single message, and we're going to Velcro those on the outside of the bathroom door and up by his spoon cabinet, and we're going to have the message say, bathroom please, or something like that, to where he can hit it and right there at the door. So he associates that, and like I said, he has good hearing, so that he can maybe get someone's attention that way more appropriately too, if he couldn't find someone to take to the bathroom with him. And I need a spoon, some little things like that. We've worked on. We're going to start. That's our new thing here lately. So now where do we start? And as a kiddo, I've kind of guided you through this. And as you mentally think about this, we break these down into smaller chunks about the yellow versus the orange and where we want to go. What do you think we need to do first? It's kind of where, as a team, you got to sit down and think about it a little bit. Do it over email, do it, you know, over text. You don't have to be face to face. I can't always be at the high school with my teachers, but they are wonderful about calling me, and we text and email, but just team it. You can do this. So when we're like, where do we start? We're like, oh, wait, back up. We got to consider some things. We talked about this a while ago, but I need to tell you a little bit about some more with him. His sensory system is very dysregulated. One day he'll come in and he's pretty good. The next day we're like, oh gracious. And he's seeking a lot of stuff. He also, if he gets frustrated, he has calluses on his hands where he bites them. So that's something I know you guys have seen, I'm sure, before. But we've tried to change some of that and mold that behavior into more acceptable, less harming behavior, I guess you could say. But he does seek that sensory input majority of the time. He does visually and tactily, it's you know, with gross motor kind of activities. We have also created a weighted cart that's on wheels that we have him push down the hall sometimes when he's getting overstimulated. Heavy work is calming to the sensory system. So we do heavy work when we're like overstimulated, and because he can become aggressive when he gets overstimulated. So trying to calm that system, we do heavy work, or he might get those deep compressions through his knees and his legs, things like that. I talked a little bit about this. He holds a plastic spoon. He also was provided a rocking chair in his room. He's probably on the third one already this 9 weeks. But they do get broken, but that's okay. So he does have some rocking. He does have a standard chair he sits in at the table for meals and stuff, and the extra large beanbag we talked a little bit about. He actually will almost jump into it and fall into it, which is amazing because he doesn't see very well, but he does, and he has not hurt himself. But that's a sensory need he's feeling. He only wears slip-on Croc-like shoes. In the summer, I don't think he wears socks, but in the fall and winter, he does. And he started a new thing lately where he's tearing the hole in the toe, but his foot stays in him, but he has no toe left. And that's a sensory thing too for him. In the fall, once he gets a jacket on, it doesn't come off. Literally, I'm not for sure he doesn't sleep in it at home. He does, and he tolerates some deep pressure, and that helps a little bit. So, and the other thing about availability to learn is the external and internal factors that you guys are going to see with these kiddos. I know you have already, I'm sure. Like for this little guy, or he's not little, I guess, but he has 4 younger sisters and they fight. Mom will say, well, he's been fighting with his sister today. And so sometimes that brings him into class, not in the best of moods, or he has actually come in and hit the locker as he come down the hall, or he's hit a kid right out of the car before. And it's just, he has no other way to communicate his frustration. And that's something that's been a real big struggle. So car rides to school, he's kicked the window out of his mom's van. Frustration, again, we talked about communication, he's physically aggressive. That's how he's getting some things across. The external factors also are, oh my gracious, sorry. Lighting, noises, tactile feedback and input he may have or lack of. Medication, those internal factors, how is his medication affecting? What are the side effects? Does he feel well? One day, for example, I was there and he was banged his head against the cabinet, hardwood cabinet. And then he would be like hitting his head. And that wasn't normal. Well, we kind of figured out he had a headache and we got permission to give him Tylenol. And mom didn't realize when I talked to mom on the phone, she's like, I hadn't thought about that. I was like, yeah, I think he's got a headache, mom. This is not how he normally does. And she's like, oh, okay, let's try that. So we got to give him Tylenol and it did get better. So it's just being observant, knowing your kiddos too is a big factor. So looking at receptive language in general, but when we look at it, some of the materials you're going to get this in a little different format, but this exact information and some of the materials you're going to be getting as part of this program. And it's going to talk a little bit about receptive language, at each level. So at level 1, it's more the awareness level. 2 is an anticipation of the orientation of people may begin. They're starting to attend to communicative behaviors. And level 3 and 4 is attending to a partner's communication or responding to their specific behaviors or intents. And that's where we are with this guy. He knows when someone's wanting to talk, is talking to him. It's kind of funny, the other day, his teacher was telling me something he had done that morning, and I was there in the afternoon. He got real still. He was awake. He got real still. And we're like, Hunter, do you know we're talking about you? And he just sat there. We're like, yep. Did you do that this morning? He knew. So, he had that awareness. He knew what was going on. I said, well, I was like, well, Mr. Hall's telling me that you didn't have a good morning this morning and whatever it was. And he was listening. He was paying attention. Or Mr. Hall was telling me you did have a good morning. However, we were working. We always try to talk about that. But being aware that he hears, so let's not talk about him in front of him is another thing we have to kind of be monitoring with these kiddos. They understand a lot more than they can communicate. So where did we start? Kind of told you how we walked through and broke down some information about the strengths and where we are and what orange and yellow were and different things. So we kind of started with his sensory strengths with touch and hearing. At level 4, which is the kind of the next level moving him up, that is that more conventional communication. We're like, it needs to be more universal and appropriate. So we started with a tactile schedule calendar system to focus on creating a routine as well, and the familiarity with the tactile symbols. He had exposure to these in the past, just hadn't had a lot of success. So Nancy helped us and we created a system for him. We incorporated some activities related around his interests, music and the sensory toys too, for when he'd come to the table to do some work skills. It wasn't just that, it was also about music and some sensory integration. Again, his teacher is a male teacher. He responds well too. So we primarily let him be the lead in this, with others being aware of what's going on. That's kind of a problem in this situation a little bit because he can be aggressive. and his teacher is so much taller than him. That's a great benefit for those like me. I'm not taller than him. He and I see eye to eye to each other. And so it becomes a little touch and go sometimes when he's not having the best mood. So, 2 minutes. So what we would do is we had his calendar. I don't know if you guys call it a calendar system or a visual tactile schedule, but if I say one or the other, that's what I'm talking about. We had it up right where his beanbag and a workstation table area was, where he kind of stays in that area. And we trained Nancy helped and she trained the teacher how to do that hand under hand, and would guide him to go get his tactile icon that indicated what he was doing for the day. We might and do a little preview as to what we were going to do first, next, last kind of thing, and grab our icon. And that icon went to where we were going. If it was going to the table for work, it went and got attached to the table with Velcro in his workstation. If it was to the bathroom icon, it got stuck on the wall in the bathroom. But anyway, we started there with him and, used a lot of verbal reinforcement. And we would incorporate his activities in music and sensory toys. So started with his interests. And that's kind of how the tactile system, we'd come back and it would go in the finished box. And he would remove it with that hand under hand assistance and go put it in his finished box. And then we'd see what's next, check your schedule. We'd go check our schedule and we would do the same for whatever would happen to be next. So when he is available to learn, we would complete those simple tasks at, I hit my mouse, guys, I'm so sorry. As long as he could kind of tolerate. At first, it kind of might have been 10 minutes, then it might go to 20 or 30, and then next day it might be back to 10 minutes. It kind of his sensory system and some external factors and internal factors kind of weigh into that a lot. But the main thing we wanted to really stress to the staff and the teachers was the need for a routine and consistent expectations for him. Routines are really critical for these kiddos, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Some of the other materials you're going to get, Nancy, they have created, have been very beneficial, and it kind of supports me because then I can give that to the teacher and say, okay, here's the things that Miss Nancy is telling us we need to do. It takes some pressure off me because where I'm going to say, all right, Miss Nancy, here we go. This is what she's created and this works. So we're going to try it this way. So like I said, he had activated a switch to turn on music when we're at the table. That's one of our, work tasks kind of is like, you want to play your music? And he gets an opportunity to play his music, and it's set up to a timer and it goes off every couple of minutes, and then he can activate it again to play his music again. So he has multiple opportunities to communicate a request. We talked about the tactile icons, and they all correlate to the main things he is doing right now: breakfast, lunch, bathroom, work time, rest time, or if he's going to his other teacher, one period a day, he switches classrooms at the high school and goes to the other teacher's room. So his teacher gets a planning period. So this is like an example of a visual tactile schedule you've probably seen, but this is something similar to what we introduced for him, and being very routine about it. Go check your schedule. Of course, he has to have guidance. We would do that. We've incorporated some assistive technology using the switch to play the radio. Developmental, I think it's supposed to be development of symbolization. Sorry, I just realized that's a typo. So this is the symbol kind of system we've been trying to get him used to so that he can feel it. And then we can work on hopefully transitioning these symbols into more expressive communication. So right now it's still on that kind of more receptive, what we're doing, touch this, feel this, kind of get familiar with it and understand, know what that is. But that's kind of the example there. Making choices is another thing that I've got some links to share with you too. The other great resources they have created already to talk about routines and making choices and things like that. But making choices is that one area was white at level 3 that were like, that could be something we need to do. And there's some strategies for helping him make choices, things like that. So these are the areas we were talking about. Anticipation calendar is also just like going through what's coming next, what's first, what's next, what's last, those kind of things. So these are the components of the routine, and this will be in the information you guys and all of the resources they give you. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm just going to tell you, I still haven't been able to get through every single level and all the resources at each level. My goal is to sit down and print all of it out and put a big binder in level 1, level 2, level 3. That's what I envision myself to doing. I haven't quite got that accomplished all the way yet, but this is one thing that was very beneficial for my teachers. I really had to sit down, and Nancy went through it first with them, and then I reiterated it after she was gone. But the components of a routine, and I have a lot of teachers go, well, sure, we do first period, second period, third period, fourth period. That's a routine. And so we had to let them know that we have to have smaller routines within first period, second period, third period. At the high school, that's what their thought process is, what classes they're on. So we had to really break it down. And it's a nice little prettier handout and what materials you're going to get, but I just recreated it for today. But initiate, how will that student know what it's time for? Well, we have our tactile schedule if we're following it and helping them go through it. But verbally for this child, it was about, hey, Hunter, in about 5 minutes, it's going to be time for lunch. Or, hey, Hunter, it's going to be time to go home. Whatever it is, we're signaling him. We're initiating the beginning of that. And what we do and what we say, how we initiate it, things like that, kind of giving that warning, or think about the visual timers that count down. Oh, we're almost there, almost there. So then when we get to the prepared step, what does that student need to be ready? Let's say that it's almost time to get to work or get to our center work or whatever you want to say. And we've initiated it, we've talked about it, we're prepared. So what do they need to do? What do we need to say to help them be prepared? So like, for example, we had a work cart, if you will, out beside his table area, and it had his tasks, activities in it, and might have what I have to do box and a finished box, for example. So, okay, Hunter, it's time. Let's go to our work. Let's go get our schedule, our icon, take it off our calendar schedule or picture schedule and put it on our work area and check your work box, basically. So he gets his material, what helps him know. And if it's same thing every day, maybe a different activity in that work box, but the process is the same. Go get my work, come back to my table, of course, with guidance for this child. Come in here, and this is some things I'm going to be doing today. You have his materials ready, and you have to assist him in whatever he's doing. Like, oh, we're finished. Let's move this to our finished box. So he knows it goes, from left to right, we're done, those kind of progressions like that. And you're getting ready to terminate our activities and being done is like, oh, we have one more to do, then we're all finished. So you're prompting him, you're giving him something to look forward to. Great, I don't have to do but one more of these or whatever it may be. So you're going to verbally do that for this kiddo. And I have a kiddo that is she's between 6 and 7. She's deafblind. And we do the same thing with her as a visual schedule, though. She can see large pictures. So she uses a visual schedule that way too, and sign language. So I'm always like, one more than finished. And so any way that I can help them know when it's almost done to when we're finished. So it's like almost done, one more. Or we're finished, good job, let's clean up and put everything in our finished box. Just those steps that help them. So my teachers, I needed for them to understand how to break down a activity within 10 minutes, not just that 50-minute period 2 of their classes. So this was very helpful in helping them see how to break everything down into little parts. And your guys are going to get this resource and all the wonderful material through this program.
And Holly, I just want to say something real quickly about the terminate. I usually do finish 3 times. First, I'm going to say almost finished, that one more whatever. And then the next finished is when we're going to clean up all the stuff. When you're in that initiate and prepare, we're gathering the materials. The student is helping to gather the materials, because that goes into that concept development and helping them know where things come from, and that things have a place and a name and such. So you have several of those components, but in the terminate, the second finished is when we're gathering those materials and putting them back where they belong. And then the third and final finished is when they do put it in that finished box or whatever, to let them know, no, we're actually finished with this. And the reason why I do that is because they really, a lot of times kids don't break off. We think we finished it for them, but they don't necessarily. They're still maybe thinking about this sometimes 2 and 3 hours later, if we don't completely terminate something for them and let them know, no, it actually is finished, and give them a little bit of processing time about what just happened before you go into the next activity. So you really want to be very systematic in that piece and letting them know, no, this actually is, we're finished. We're all done. We're not going to do that anymore today.
Yeah, that's been very beneficial with some of, I'll give you an example, like concept development that Nancy talked a little bit about, and you guys will be talking more about that, I know. It was with my kiddo who's deafblind, who's in a 6 or 7. We have really, Nancy helped guide us through this. And I have to reiterate this with her teacher a lot, but she and I do this often. Her concept of where things come from, like Nancy said, was like, oh, duh, I didn't think about that. Like, I know how I bind these little books or make this craft or whatever, but she doesn't know how, where did that come from out of thin air? So actually, she and I make a lot of books together. And I actually have a small laminator in my room, and she helps me. We laminate our pages after we've created them. She helps make our pages. If it's pictures, what if she glues them? We laminate them. She loves all of this. Then I actually have an old, I don't know, it's schools. It's an old like little spiral binder thing with a little plastic binder. She helps me. She loves to pull the handle down and make it punch the holes in there. And she really just, I think it's also put a different perspective, because she can be destructive to things, books and stuff. And she has not torn any of the books she and I make together that we keep in her class library at all. So I don't know if that's because she has investment and ownership in it because she helped create it. But it was like she loves it and wants to do that all the time. So whatever event or trip she's been on, I have mom send me pictures. We create vocabulary and learn about it. They just went to New York recently, so we're going to be making our book about New York, giving her the vocabulary and teaching their signs for that. That's just an example of that concept development. I was like, oh, I've taught language kids concepts forever, but this is a different type of concept development. And Nancy really opened my eyes to how that component is so beneficial to teaching the kids where this stuff comes from and how to deal with it. It's been great for this kiddo. This is just the last thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick. These were some links, hopefully this will work, but that you all are going to get, okay? This is part of some stuff, but I just wanted to share some of the things. So these are things that we use to help our kiddo. I'm clicking on it. I'm hoping it's going to take me where I need it to take me. Here we go. Okay. So each level that you guys are going to be talking about, each level is going to have an overview. Okay. So this is nice. This may be something you share with all your team, your parents even, but it breaks down and tells you about the level. It tells you what the typical message is communicated at that level, what messages how they're communicated, what they're through, how they refuse, obtains, all that kind of stuff. But then down here, how they get that across, body movements, facial expressions, such. The green is the goal for the communication partner, which is us, who's the child's partner. And then the goals that give you ideas for goals on the kiddo, what the kiddo needs to do, communicate those messages. And there's some options, and it gives you example goals on each level. So I really thought this was beneficial. Some intervention principles, important strategies. I just think this was kind of a nice summary. And I was like, oh, it's all in one place for my kid at this level. It was great for my teachers too.
And you guys will be getting those,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
don't sweat it.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
will
said.
be
Don't
getting
fret. I just
for
wanted to
each
show
level.
you some of the things that I pulled information from so that you know you're going to have this kind of resource when you have these kids. You can just pull from level that you're at. This was a nice little strategies page that I just wanted to make sure you look at and look for when you do get this, because it was kind of great for me. And it went on each level and it gave specific strategies. So it's saying things that if you aren't doing these continued strategies, start doing them, because this is the level the kid needs them at, basically. And it has a link attached. And then new strategies to introduce, and some tools, things that you might need. And it goes through all the levels. So I just wanted to share that. It's nice and concise, because sometimes I get overwhelmed, but these keep me grounded. So I did like those. This last one is some actual goals per level. That's all on one page, and it's kind of nice. I don't know if it's going to open it, or I need to click on it. So this was kind of nice. So each level gives you a descriptive of the level and considerations to follow for just some interventions that would be possible. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, and kind of, at least if you don't want to use that exact wording, it gives you some brainstorming information. Sorry, guys.
Students that are available that brought their Bible today, bring it to the FRC hallway.
All right, guys, I think that's all I had. I'm going to stop sharing.
Does anybody have any questions for Holly? Any concerns? We will be.
What should we do next, or what should we have done differently? I'm good with that too.
Right. We are going to ask you that in just a minute. Lisa, do you want to talk about how we're going to do this next piece?
Sure. So what we're going to do here in just a few minutes is that we're going to put you into groups. I have already done that. You will go to breakout rooms. There is a Padlet, which I will put the link for in the chat box if you don't already have it. It was sent to you yesterday. And we're going to, on that Padlet, there are questions that you need to discuss as a group, and then post up there kind of anything that comes to the top is really important, or something that was an aha. Well, so you'll have to have somebody who is willing to do the recording. And when we come back, we would like for you to really briefly in each group tell us one or two things that were really significant for your group. Does that make sense to everybody?
And also, just when you open your Padlet, there's just 5 questions, nothing complicated, just some things to brainstorm, talk about. The last little section, if you scroll over, has resources and links. We actually kind of created that. If you have like a great interest inventory you use and you think it's just the easiest thing and the best thing, stick it in there. You know, we all can share resources. That's one thing about having us all together. It's an opportunity to share things and grow from each other. But if you have something else you like, or a website that you get information, anything you think is a resource, a link you want to share, you can drag it and drop it in there.
Okay. So the Padlet link is up. If anybody has trouble getting to it, let me know. And I did want to mention that some of the stuff that Holly was talking about, it was to give you an idea of what they as a team did. Really, this is a lot of detective work. You're really trying to figure out this student, and you need to do it as a group, as a real team. And we wanted to give you an example of somebody who's a little bit further down that road than you all are. Some of the things that she said that you're going to be getting, you're actually probably going to be getting it this week in your homework. So it'll give you something to kind of think back on and say, oh yeah, that's what Holly was talking about. So
Yes,
Some
some you
of it.
will get this next time and some you will get the next time after that. You know, we don't want to overwhelm you with everything we have in one visit. So we're going to give you a little bit at a time but you will get everything. I promise.
And before you guys go to your sessions, I just wanted to say thank you, Nancy, and to this team that's created this. Like I said, I've been in this practice for a long time, and these kiddos, I just don't feel that we have anything out there that, okay, we've had the Matrix. I don't know if you know, Matrix been there for a very long time. Okay. But it said, okay, here it is. Here they are. See you later. It didn't really guide us what to do next. I mean, you had to be your own investigator. And sometimes you're like, my brain's dead. I have so much to do. Can I just someone do that, help me, guide me, and give me some support? This gives us that support, guys, that I feel like we have been missing. And for these severe profound kiddos that have these complex needs, and I just needed a little, okay, here you go. Here's a little support. I feel like I was out in the middle of an ocean on an island by myself some days. But this has really been a spark for me to kind of go, oh, okay. I have guidance and I have incremental progress I can finally show these parents, and I'm excited. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a real labor of love, and all of us that created these things, we've been around the block many times, and we really learn from each other as well. There were 2 SLPs and 3 teachers, and 3 of us are also technical assistance providers. So we've been in lots and lots of classrooms and seen lots and lots of kids, and especially at the lower levels. So it really has been fun, and I hope you guys will enjoy this stuff. Now let's break into our groups. We're only going to be in there for just maybe 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to come out and report out a little bit. And then we'll give you your homework assignment, which is starting to dive into some of these materials that we're talking about. So let's break into our groups now, Lisa, if you don't mind.
All right.
And like I said, remember to—
You guys should go out and you will come back.
And remember to somebody record in the Padlet from your group and somebody report out. Okay, so we had asked each one of you somebody to record and then somebody just to report out a little bit from each of the rooms. And you don't have to give us long and drawn details, but things that sparked you, things that maybe your group talked about that you think is of particular interest. Let's start with group 1. Who was their recording out?
I was.
Okay.
I can retell. We, as far as using the Matrix, kind of used that for both did paper and online, and didn't really see a huge difference in like getting we got the same results, but like seeing that incremental growth that you can see, especially when you do it over time with the same student. As far as the likes and dislikes, one part of the group brought up that sometimes it can be hard when you have students whose likes and dislikes change from activity, like they like something a lot one week and then 2 weeks later they no longer like it. So that can be difficult, but it was nice to see like the different sensory options and kind of seeing how once you identify like a sensory area that is of interest, being able to expand that to other activities. Can't remember what and then for activity 1, the nice thing about doing that was getting all the different disciplines together and kind of how everyone's viewing it through their lens. But when you put it all on one sheet together, you really get a more complete picture of who the child is.
Well, and one of the things that you all need to know, because some of them were filled out pretty well and some of them not so much, I think that particular activity is going to be revisited again, and especially once you get more information over the next few weeks on like the availability to learn and just what that means exactly. And you may then want to go back and revisit that form. So sorry to break into that, but you may have needed to know that.
Oh no, I think those were kind of the highlights of our discussion.
Okay, did you have anything for Holly, for Mr. Hunter?
Oh, we talked about kind of continuing with that, starting to use some of those like voice output switches and do that kind of consistently with activities that he enjoys.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, group 2.
Hey, this is Anna.
There you go.
Yep. I will share on behalf of the group. And I'll be honest, I was looking at the Padlet and not registering all the questions. So we only kind of focused on the first part.
That's okay.
But some things that were shared were, the groups that I was working with, 2 of my AIM teams that are here are just kind of getting started. 2 of them are very much in the starting phase because one of the speech language pathologists just moved from the medical field into the schools and is just learning. Yeah. So they're feeling, this is it's intense, a lot of paperwork, a lot of things to work through, but they know the team approach is important. That can still be a little tricky though, even just to coordinate with people, even in a virtual space. So just figuring out some of those bumps along the way. They were appreciative, or we were talking about how nice the matrix is for communicating with parents and with teachers though, to say, here's where they are, here's my rationale for what I'm helping you, or what these strategies are that we want you to be using in the classroom. Throughout the day with the student. And one of our group members was talking about a language barrier because the parents speak a different language. And so how that's going to be a challenge. They'll have to have an interpreter present, and how to break that information down in small bite-sized chunks to support those parents at home too.
And the matrix is in several different languages. They do have those, so that might help for some.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know Anna's here. She was part of the group. The other girl, I think, had to step out for a minute, or the woman. So we'll let them know. But it is a kind of a unique dialect, right, Anna? Yeah.
Burmese, there's like hundreds of dialects. So.
Yeah, Burmese.
Chin. So
Yeah.
Oh, there's Callie. Callie's here.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Chin. If we could start adding Burmese and Chin dialects, that would be awesome.
I mean, it's in like, I think 30 different languages or something, somewhere around in there. So it could be that you at least have the matrix in their language. This information that we have out, we just barely got it out in English. Come on. So, but it could happen. It could happen.
I did want to ask real quick, those resources that Holly shared toward the end of the slideshow were, I thought, super helpful, and like the skills and those strategies with links. Will those be shared out? I see they're not in her case study right now.
They are not in there yet, but you will be getting those. Those are actually resources that we have been developing, and you all will have access to every one of those resources and more. So she just gave you that little peek show of things that we've done. We just haven't given them out to you yet because we try not to overwhelm you with all the stuff at once, but you will be getting those.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yep. Okay, so group 3, how about you guys? Thanks so much, group 2. Appreciate you. Did group 3 leave the building?
I don't know if was Jeff Bond, was it Jeff and David, group 3?
Maybe, I don't know.
I thought you were 4, but I can look.
Well, you can go on since you're on, David.
Well, Jeff and I, Jeff is our part of our ICAM for the digital accessible materials, accessible education materials, and our NIMUS repository for. And I'm a specialist, so I only have one team. My team's not here. I love Communication Matrix. We recommend it and we use it throughout all of our AAC consultations that we do through the Patents Project with all of our stakeholders. I love it for many reasons you guys have already mentioned. It's great for baseline and it's great for progress monitoring and sharing, at the case conference table. One thing that I've seen in the past that's happened is if you're too strict and maybe not open-minded, maybe not saying that right, and maybe you can explain it a little better than I can, but sometimes you end up with a level 1 or level 2 when the student actually has higher level skills.
That's an excellent point because you're right. Sometimes we get so in our little boxes that we don't give them credit. For me, it's give them credit, as much credit as you can. Assume meaning when they're doing these behaviors.
Okay, I like that terminology because I think that's the thing that happens when people are just starting out with it.
Right. You definitely want to assume that they have it. I would rather give them the credit for it and then, just maybe put in my mind that I need to watch that more because so much of this is subjective and it's observation. There's so many things, but as you're looking at those things, you start to see patterns, Yeah.
And one other thing that I really take from the matrix is when I'm doing my consultations, so I support AAC and orthopedic impairments for all K-12 as part of patents. But one of the things I always reference communication matrix, and I want people to think about when you're working on communication, don't just have the kids identify, where's the pen, where's the pencil, where's this, but think about those 4 areas of communication. It's not just receptive and expressive, but it's really, how do they refuse more appropriately? How can they, request and share, socialize, and all of those other pieces. And here's a tool that you can use to help guide you.
Exactly. Beautifully said, my friend. Beautifully said. Okay, shall we move on to, I don't know which group we're on now. Would it be 5?
No, he was indeed 3.
Oh, okay. So 4.
Now you're on 4.
Okay, I think I'm 4, but I'm not sure. And people, you can chime in. There were 4 of us on there. I wrote some notes, so I just thought I'd go ahead. As far as the first part about the communication matrix, we felt like we really love this tool because it's fast and we love the online version and we really think that it gave us some good goals and places to go. So we felt like we had everything at our fingertips and didn't have to, go searching for ideas. As far as the likes and dislikes form, we love that because, and especially loving those sensory preference options. For us in Logansport, we found out that our little guy liked pineapple. The smell of pineapple. How would we have known that if we hadn't figured that out? So, and I just got done taking the EMC3 course. So that sensory assessment is huge. And I love the tie-in for that. So I'm really loving that for communication purposes. For the activity worksheet, we found out things that we didn't know about that child through group discussion. So we were able to figure out that, oh my goodness, this child indeed has a hearing loss that we're not sure, how significant that is, but somewhere buried in all that information and lost along the time here, found those kinds of things out and loved the idea of, getting our OTs and PTs involved. As far as resources, David had mentioned, he uses that and from him and from Patents, I've learned so much about, using the SET framework, using a preference assessment, using that EMC3 to help you with that, using the DAG, and then that communication dictionary is awesome. And then for number 5, when we, with Hunter, we felt like we could capitalize on his likes for the music and incorporate the use of switches and utilizing core vocabulary with him. So I think that's about it.
Excellent. That sounds great. Thank you so much. All right. 6.
You left out 5, Nancy.
Oh, did I? I keep doing that.
Yep.
Sorry about that. 5. I can't count today. All right, so team 5.
We're team 5. A lot of things you guys have already mentioned, especially when we did the likes and dislikes with the parents, it was more we learned dislikes. There were things that we hadn't tried with him before, but he doesn't like that. So it's a direction we won't probably go with him. We also discussed how I think listening to David, we were probably stricter with the communication matrix than others. We went a little bit, not so much some of those unconventional ways to communicate, but more conventional ways. So we're probably going to go back and relook at that because he is probably higher than what we were giving him credit for.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad that you're looking at that and going back and revisiting, because it's okay. It's fine for you to go back and edit and revisit this. As you learn more, as you think about it more, then you're gonna try new things, try different things, and you're gonna come up with different solutions. So, I mean, you truly are in detective mode at this point, you know, and that's perfect. That's where we're supposed to be. Okay, so any other things that bubbled up for you? Any suggestions for Holly? I'm always looking for suggestions for Holly, since she gave us her time.
No, our thing that we were most interested to keep going with that tactile schedule, staying on that, especially with those kiddos with low vision or vision impairments of some sort, that tactile we felt was very important for them so that they can take control of their schedules.
Some kids with autism, I think, could use that tactile as well. You know, sometimes that tactile sense, we don't use that as much. I do because I'm in the deaf-blind world and know how powerful it is. But sometimes we don't think about just how it is. I mean, you think about your own self and when you're stressed, and sometimes I have to hold my keys to remind me, oh yeah, I'm going to my car. You know, so it's that tactual feeling of things. And so why wouldn't our students be that way? You know, so that's just a good reminder that just because we're saying it and, oh yeah, use it with blind, and, you know, we tend to categorize, but sometimes it's okay for us to try that tactual schedule with a kid with autism instead of just the pictures, because maybe the pictures are not things that they'll relate to as much as they will with tactual. So just a thought. Okay, anything else from your group? Okay, thank you. All right, now group 6. I eventually will get this right, maybe.
I think the main takeaway, or not talked about by everyone, is just that activity 1, that it's comprehensive and it kind of makes you take a look at the student as a whole, like a refresh. And it was definitely more difficult to complete. Like kind of you were stumbling and asking yourself questions and bouncing off team members on that activity 1 worksheet.
And I do think, Sarah, that you will continue to use it and do that. You know, I think that as you do, you're going to get more pieces of the puzzle, because these kids really are like a great big puzzle, and just putting those pieces together and trying to figure it out. And we're in that kind of discovery process right now.
And then one of our other team members, an idea or suggestion for a resource is just to keep I guess it would have been an Acume file. It's synonymous with that, where you just have a shared digital doc that documents the process. So you can always go back and visit. And then if your student is traveling to a different building or a different teacher of record, they can see like a videotaped example of how the routine has been established and then what the routine looks like with all the cues and the steps. So it's not a reinvention and we don't have as much, sometimes we have some skill lapses just because there's so many new people and so much new language.
And that is the power, I think, of this is using those, that shared space because we get new students in and it takes us sometimes 6 months to figure out all the pieces, that if we had something like this and we could see it ahead of time, we're not reinventing the wheel. I always go back to that kid thinking, oh, great. It's going to take them another 2 months to figure out when I kick my leg, it means this, So I think that in having those kind of things for us as our cheat sheets on these kids, it's going to help for us to get in there and establish that relationship and move them forward instead of them constantly having to teach us about them,
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Group 7.
Hi, and the rest of Group 7, feel free to jump in if I'm not representing everything that we said. But one of the things that we talked about was the first, the computer versus the paper version of this, and that David Jackson and Jessica Conrad gave some really great advice when it came to doing this, that it's really awesome to pass the parents the paper piece, because if you give them the computerized piece, it might shut them down too quickly with them not completely understanding the semantics of some of the questions at the beginning. And that paper keeps them going through. So that is going to be very helpful as we move through this process, but that we tended to use the digital version, with the collaborative of the group part. And that the likes and dislikes, being able to see the sensory preferences carried over to new activities, and concerns about the likes changing frequently with the students. Somebody else mentioned that, but I also added that I really like the incremental number, and that had to do everything with Holly's presentation, not what the activity was. I just misunderstood what it was, but Holly, shout out, because that was a really great piece of information to see that small amount of growth that means so much to everybody. And let's see. Oh, the resources. So Bev Sherritt shared out the communication dictionary, and that we popped that into the resource page at the end, but we were really brainstorming, talking as a team about how important it would be, when you're moving in those transition grades to new teachers, passing that information along to keep that ongoing log so that people really got a true flavor of that interaction. And like you said, the parts of the puzzle that we figure out, we don't keep those pieces to ourselves. We need to keep them going, and advocate for kids who might not be able to tell you on their own. So, so that was it. Does anybody else on my team have anything that I've missed that you wanted to share?
Well, and when we talk about the communication dictionary, when we get to each of the levels, because this next little piece will in your homework assignment this next time, we're going to be talking about the foundational module, which is broken into three pieces, yeah. And then the essential strategies is also one. So you'll be watching like 4 segments, not the levels. When we get into the levels, which is the next time, then each one of those has some form of communication dictionary, whether it be a Q dictionary when they're in level 1 or on up to communication dictionaries, and each level will have some representation of that. So don't get all caught up yet, because you're going to get those, okay? Because it really does. I mean, I've been in this a long time and seen lots of classrooms, and it makes me crazy to know that you have, every bit of your students' communication, then they move to the next year and they have whole new teachers and everything, and they're starting from scratch again. And if they had this stuff, and I kind of feel like if we do it and move it forward, then somebody's going to do it for us one day, All right, do we have 7 or 8 groups? Lisa?
Just 7.
Okay, so we went through all groups. Yay! Okay. All right. So anything for the good of the group on any of this? Because you all did a fantastic job. I love it. I love it. And I love that you're talking to each other and such.
I had a question about the DAG. I think there was a group that had mentioned a few resources, but I didn't catch them all. And I was just curious to see what other resources attached to DAG those were. I don't remember what group it was.
I don't know. Would they be in the Padlet?
I was going to say, I think they should be in that Padlet because they're on the last part of those. It's like under resources if you look.
Sorry, this is Kathy from Logansport. Yeah, I'm the one that mentioned that. And so I didn't add it to the Padlet yet, but I will.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Excellent. And then David's putting something in there too. Yay.
Sorry for the long link. That's the DAG. It's DAGG2. It's like a checklist. And I talk about this as something somewhat similar to the matrix because it has 5 levels. And it correlates more to the AAC side, but also language, linguistic, operational, social. It's a great resource. It's a free resource as well.
Love those free resources. Yay. Okay, so what we're the next for your homework assignment, you should have in the folder, there is a sheet for homework, and your homework this time is to watch these modules. There, like I said, one of them is the foundation, and it's a long presentation, so we've broken it into 3 different areas. The first one is really talking about the matrix a little bit, unpacking that a little bit, so it's for review for a lot of folks. It also talks about the difference between the paper version and the electronic version, and just making sure that you're starting at the right place, because sometimes it will make you skip, and it describes that. Then it goes into some of these things that we've been talking about. We talked about availability to learn. This is going to unpack that a little bit more. It's also going to just unpack a little bit about the trusting relationship. We all assume that we have trusting relationships with kids, but we don't necessarily have them if we think about it. It's worth revisiting. There's nothing in this homework. It'll probably take you maybe 2.5 hours to get through all of the 4 sections. But we've also posed a few questions just for you to be thinking about as you're going through. You don't have to, write them out and give your answers or whatever. We will be discussing them the next time and when we come back together. So, because we feel like this is where it starts pulling everything together. All these pieces that we have from here, we're just pulling it all and thinking about things from just a different perspective. So, it's not going to be a lot of fun watching these videos, but I promise this is the only time you have to do it, is one time. Just then you'll never have to watch them again, I promise. And then we will the next time go into those levels. That will be the next assignment before we actually get together. So with that, any questions, concerns? Everybody knows where to find that sheet, right? Hopefully. And then also don't forget the evaluation. Lisa, I think, put it in the chat pod, right?
A couple of times I did.
All right.
All right, the sheet has all of the questions broken up by section, and it has the links to the videos that you need to watch. And Nancy, you made it sound so fun.
Sorry. Get some popcorn. How's that?
If any of you have trouble getting to it, let me know and I'll get you in. So.
And somebody asked, our next meeting date is the 27th of October. And it's from 2:30 to 4:30, the same time. And where can we access the Padlet if we want to view it again? will we put the link to it in that folder, Lisa?
It was in the last reminder email. I can put something in there with the link as well.
Right, and just use the link, I think it will be fine.
So,
All right, you guys, this has been wonderful.